And now, Rate That Album, Season 3, with Paul Muad'Dib and Joe Fremming. Two guys who know stuff.
Hi, and welcome back to Rate That Album, back and forth album review between myself, Joseph Fremming, and my good friend Paul Muad'Dib. Paul, how are you doing?
Do you feel it when you touch me?
Paul, I'm going to stick it deep inside because I'm loose. Yes, this week, Paul dodged a bullet with the
Woohoo!
the shit list. And we went with a Stone Cold classic, a 1970s funhouse by none other than the Stooges. The Stooges made up of Dave Alexander, the brothers Ron and Scott Ashton, and one James Newell Osterberg Jr., otherwise known as Iggy Pop. Well, let's kind of just start. What are your first thoughts? And two, your thoughts on Iggy Pop and maybe where you was first introduced to him.
So, let's start with Iggy Pop and where I was first introduced. So my first true introduction to Iggy Pop, I had no idea, and that was through the Adventures of Pete and Pete.
Classic show.
Classic show. And he was Trachtenberg's dad as a guest star. And
I did not know that.
Yeah, and the episode revolves around him like not wanting to lose his daughter, you know, and being like this overly clingy parent. And they're at this dance at like middle school, and he's like decides to get up and sing a song about trying to dance with his daughter and mortifies her, and it's great. So that was my first introduction to Iggy. My second introduction to Iggy was the Crow City of Angels. I think you're catching a theme here. It wasn't until I started working in our high school and I started hanging out with these girls and this group of really eclectic music people that were into, like, you know, punk, proto-punk, goth, you know, all this stuff. And I was introduced to my friend Christy this actual album, and because we were kind of playing music together a little bit at the time, and oh my God, like, it blew my mind. And I've been a fan of Iggy and the Stooges, but Iggy mostly, ever since. Like, yeah, he to me is definitely one of those, like, he's a fuck up, but he's in my musical idols for sure.
Yeah, he's amazing. My introduction was probably the Crow City of Angels. I don't know which came first, that or the Trainspotting soundtrack.
Oh yes,
because Lust for Life was huge in the mid '90s because of that soundtrack, and that was, God, it was such a fucking great song, and I loved it. Mm-hmm. And then it was packed with the Crow soundtrack. Now, on the Crow soundtrack, I believe for City of Angels, he had a live version of "I Want to Be Your Dog" on there,
mm-hmm.
which is, God, that's phenomenal. And then wasn't until, I liked that, and it wasn't until probably around 2005 or 4 when Media Play was going out of business in St. Cloud, and I picked up the deluxe editions of their first album, The Stooges, and Funhouse, dirt cheap, like the double CDs, and those, like, just blew me away. Just how wild and insane and uninhibited these albums with the Stooges are. And Iggy's always kind of but he has such a diverse music catalog. And
oh gosh, yeah.
You have this, and then you have poppier stuff like China Girl.
Yep.
Which was like a huge hit. Bowie, he worked with David Bowie. He was he worked
with the B-52s.
Back in 2010, I believe he did like an album all in French. It was like a jazzy French album.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's all over the map. So he's a fascinating guy to me.
Yeah, and going back to the Trainspotting thing, I remember that as well. That was like a big thing because I was in the newspaper. I was in a montage, and that album was played constantly. That the first album, and like I think it was 6 months later, the second album came out. There was 2 Trainspotting soundtrack albums, and I remember listening to Night Clubbing and thinking that was a newer song written for Trainspotting, and the fact that he's the one that originally wrote China Girl, and the story I understood it was mostly him improvising. He didn't sit down and read it. Like that was just him improvising the lyrics, and he essentially farted out China Girl, which is absolutely nuts because that was a huge hit, not just for him, but for Bowie.
Yeah, and he had a big influence on Bowie too. Let's also bring that up. Like, if it wasn't for Iggy and the Stooges, especially by the time I don't think there would have been a Ziggy Stardust.
No, there wouldn't have. You're absolutely right. I don't think there would have.
Yeah, I mean, him and Bowie were like tight. And I believe they both moved to Berlin to kick heroin together. Mm-hmm. And, like, unbeknownst to them, that Berlin was the heroin capital of the world at the time.
Whoops.
Oopsie.
Yeah, and I know that just recently he was given a Lifetime Achievement Award, and I believe it was it Idiot, that was like his album The Idiot, where like outside of the Stooges, like that's the one that like every fucking new wave artist was like, this is the grail, this is it. And so yeah, I mean, the sad thing to me though is I don't think, because of the way music has gotten so sanitized now, we'll never get another Iggy.
No, and we'll get into it, because not only will we'll never get an Iggy on a major label, you'll never get an album like Funhouse.
Yeah.
And so, just to preface, before Iggy became a huge superstar, he was in a little band called the Stooges, with 2 brothers and another guy. They're just a bunch of, podunk stoner acid heads from Michigan. I love how the Midwest just creates, whenever like something from the coasts come, the Midwest, we seem to soak it up and make it even more fucked up.
Yeah, we do. Oh, we're good for that.
Yeah, like, like they have the long hair and like they're burnouts, but like they don't buy into the hippie bullshit, and they're not pretentious like the East Coast with the Velvets, like the Stooges were just like in your face, like heavily inspired by a lot of rock and roll, but especially their brothers in arms of sense, the MC5, which was gonna be the other pick. It was between Funhouse and Kick Out the Jams by the MC5, but I decided, because Detroit has this weird. It gives us Alice Cooper and Iggy and the Stooges, and it gives us the MC5, but then it also gives us Ted Nugent and Kid Rock. So
I know, it's so weird. Yeah. Detroit is either it's very polarizing in either like you're a Kid Rock or you're a Ted Nugent or you're an Iggy Pop. Like there's not a lot of like gray area from what we get out of Detroit. I mean, Eminem was from Detroit, right?
Yep. So is the Insane Clown Posse.
Yeah, ICP from Detroit. Yep, absolutely.
But then we also have the White Stripes.
Yeah. The Detroit and Midwest, man. We take what's out there and we totally, for the successful ones, flip it on its head.
Yeah. So, this stuff's coming. So they start a band called the Stooges. Originally, the Psychedelic Stooges. They get signed to a label. They want to make sure it's all right because, they're kind of inspired by the Three Stooges. One of the Ashton brothers, I believe, calls up Mo Howard, asking him if it's okay if they go by the Stooges. Mo Howard says, I don't give a fuck what you call yourselves as long as it's not the Three Stooges.
That's hilarious.
They do their first album and, critically panned, commercially not successful. Not surprising. This is one of those things where the Stooges didn't really get their due until decades after.
Yeah.
I mean, they get some with Raw Power a few years after this, but not really. They don't get the recognition until the bands they influence start coming up, and the bands they influence is wide. It's a wide spot.
Wide.
You got
Lot
you got Jack White. You got the Ramones. You got Metallica. You got like all sorts of these.
You got Susie and the Banshees. Yep. Depeche Mode, Nine Inch Nails, Joy Division.
Yeah, like you got the goths, you got the punks, you got the metalheads. All it's like beeline with this influence of the Stooges, and especially Funhouse. I would argue a lot of these albums that we grew up with would not exist if it wasn't for Funhouse.
Completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you hear a lot of influence. Like I was listening to this going, oh.
Rage Against the Machine, pretty much rips off TVI, and we'll get into that. But
yeah, absolutely.
But this is the start of their career, and what I love about it is that these guys are just fucking. It's just magical in that they're not the most technically proficient players, but they make it work amazingly, and that goes like when I think a lot of people get intimidated when they want to start bands. Be like, well, I'm not on the technical prowess of like all these like greats. It's like you don't have to be.
Yeah,
you just have to have imagination and the imagination to make your skills and flaws work in your advantage. And that's what the Stooges, I'd argue with, especially with Funhouse, they managed to do it very well.
Oh gosh, yeah. Oh no, they absolutely own it. They own that. I mean, Iggy knows he's not the most proficient singer. This is not the best bass work I've ever heard. It's not the most technically sound guitar work. There are mistakes by the drummer all over this album.
Yeah, it works.
But it works, and it works fucking well.
Yeah, and so like people wanting to start bands and stuff, you don't have to be the best. You just got to have the will to do it and the imagination to make things work. And look no further than Funhouse. A lot of other bands, I'm not saying like every shit band out there is going to make a great album, but it can happen, people. You can be the best musician in the world and make the worst album I've ever heard. It's happened.
It's happened. We'll be bringing up more examples. We've brought up examples of it.
But yeah, so this is the Stooges' second album. They go to LA to record it. So John Cale, there's all these weird connections, but John Cale, ex Velvet Underground, produced their first album. That got Iggy introduced to Nico.
Yep.
They were friends and hung out, and it's just this wild confluence of acts. And then they come out here, and Iggy kind of has two influences, and that kind of spills off to the other guys. And I don't think you'll be surprised when I say which ones they are. Paul, Howlin' Wolf and Miles Davis's Bitches Brew.
No, I'm not. No, not even. Not even.
You hear a lot of Bitches Brew on this.
Oh yeah,
guys who you would not imagine would be making jazz in the middle of chaotic rock and roll.
Yeah, there is a lot of jazz influence on this. No fucking question about it.
Yeah. Yep. So so this is the second album. How they recorded it's interesting. Each day they go in the studio, they do one song, and they play the song all the way through. Not a lot of bands do this, but the Stooges did it for this, and that they didn't do false start takes, half takes, just to get a specific sound. They played the song all the way through and then picked which take they thought was the best, and then that's when they'd put overdubs on it.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they destroy the studio to get the sound that they had making this album? If I'm not mistaken?
They pulled down a lot of the, I guess, like the soundproofing stuff. because it was like not getting the sound they wanted, because their live shows were insane, and they were not getting that sound in the studio, so they started taking that down. So the interesting thing when you're listening to this, you can hear the bass rattling the drum kit, which you really never hear on studio recordings, because it's like they're normally the drummers will be isolated, or it's just like, it's very rare to like take down the soundproofing stuff and think the separations that most people in the studio do, but they wanted a live raw sound, and that's kind of how they got the sound on Raw Power, or not Raw Power, but Funhouse.
So what? Yeah, and I think this is something that I personally, and why I think I love this album so much, is I think you and I know I did. Were you there when it was Incubus, Black Sabbath, and Pantera?
I was not at that show.
Okay, you were not at that show. So that was the first time I saw Pantera live. And since watching it, the only Pantera albums I can actually listen to are the live albums anymore, because you don't get that sound. And this is a thing, like, Java Joint, you used to go to the punk shows at Java Joint, didn't you?
Every now and then. Java Joint, Java Z, yeah.
Okay. And I was like a Java Joint kid. I was there all the time, every day. And I would hang out with, people and everything, and then go to these shows. And this is the kind of sound that you got. This was like real punk. So for me, like, getting into punk through live music and then finding the albums, being like, God, you're not getting this sound. And this is something that I think I absolutely love about this album, is it sounds like they're on stage, and you get that energy like they're on stage that you just don't get on albums anymore.
No, yeah, and we really didn't get it back in the day either. This is one of those rare ones where the studio album actually matches the sound of their live show, but like, again, they had to do unconventional ways of recording to get that, and I'm sure mixing it was probably a pain in the ass.
Oh, I have to imagine mixing was a bitch.
Yeah, I'm sure mixing this was a bitch, because you're getting all sorts, again, like, they had the basses rattling the drum kit, so that's getting picked up by the mics and all that, but it kind of adds to it, because this track 1 to track 7, it's a lot. It's chaos, but it's chaos. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful chaos. Like, oh man, I just love it. It's just like, this is like, so when people, you see music critics and they'll call an album like balls out in your face rock and roll. Like, my barometer for that is Funhouse.
Yeah.
If it's not where you're near what Funhouse is, it's not really balls out in your face rock and roll, Paul.
No, I'm with you. It's not. It's not. And I think that's why, the Black Album got a lot of attention, because it was filmed in a way where it sounded more live and more gritty, and had that take on it. It had some of that warmth, that depth. And that's what I think is phenomenal about this album, because you can also tell that he's not using a pop guard when he's singing either. You can hear a lot of times where he's popping his T's and his P's like you would be live on stage, and it just adds to it. Like, you would think it would detract, but it adds to the energy that you're grabbing out of this album.
Yeah, exactly, and that's kind of like the beauty of it. It's a warts and all. And yeah, we'll get to the track, but another thing I just want to say is, like, what I love about it, it's the rhythms and all that are pretty simple. It's just what they build over it is like, it's so insane. Like, on paper, this album, neither you or I should like it.
No,
right? Like, on paper, somebody wrote down, this is how this album sounds, and this is like the most basic bass lines and all that, and like, no, I wouldn't want to listen to that.
Yeah.
So on paper, it doesn't work, but in practice, it absolutely does.
And this album, like, there's a lot of things that I have bitched about from previous podcasts that we've done about previous albums that I literally should despise and hate this album, because it hits a lot of my pet peeves. But it's done in a way that I'm like, son of a bitch, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's it happens, man. Sometimes just it goes against everything you believe, but you just like it. That's the beauty of art, you know. And this is one hell of an album to be doing our 100th podcast on, Paul.
It's our 100th episode, sir. Yeah, episode 100. Well, of all of our podcasts, you and I have been doing 100 podcasts. Joe, we've missed some weeks, right? So we've been doing this now for over 2 years.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. A lot of us just talking our bullshit, Paul.
Yep. Between Twin Peaks and music albums, and you coming in on and I'm not even counting Cast That Movie. That's not even included in that. And you were on a couple episodes of Cast That Movie.
Oh yeah. So yeah, it's a good way to bring it in, Paul. Celebrate 50s because or 100th episode, because this is one hell of a doozy. So let's start with the opening track, Paul. Down on the Street.
Down on the Street
sets the tone for this album, because I also have to. This album's wildly different from their first album.
Mm-hmm.
First album was a collection of like poppy songs done with attitude, and this is just like, nope. We're not gonna do I Want to Be Your Dog, and I'm not gonna do No Fun in 1969. If you listen to 1969 and 1970, the difference is crystal clear.
Very, very different. And it opens right away with like with the guitar and the drums, and then Iggy just off key screaming. And you know right away you're in for something like, okay, this is happening.
But it's like, and God, the riffs on this album, Paul, the riffs in this song, and we'll get into it because they're just like, they're catchy.
Mm-hmm.
And they're catchy and distorted and dirty. The lyrics, especially, lyrics don't make a lick of sense.
Nope.
Doesn't matter. Iggy's just screaming.
Yep. And again, I should hate this because this breaks, it's a lot of repeat of the same shit. There's not a lot of depth here lyrically. And, that's one of the things I always say is, that's a downside to this thing. But he's just screaming and yelling, and it's more of if
it's like
Tom
using his vocals as a compliment to the other instruments.
Right.
Like, screaming is part of the music. It's not like the music isn't focused on the lyrics, which we oftentimes have when we're reviewing these. Like, the music complements what the lyrics are saying. This time the vocals are complementing the music.
Right. So Tom York and Radiohead were very, really, it got to the point where Tom York started to realize that most people couldn't understand half his lyrics. So when it came through Kid A and Amnesiac, he started spouting nonsense on purpose to use his voice to just complement what was being done. So if there is the complimentary side of Radiohead, Iggy Pop in the 70s, 40 years beforehand, was using his voice as a dissonance to go with this savage rock, jazz, punk, proto-punk fusion.
Yeah, and let's also say, say there would be no Kid A and Amnesia if there wasn't Funhouse.
No.
Not the way we know it, at least.
There wouldn't be a lot of things. I mean, I hear fucking Misfits and Danzig all over this.
I also hear mid-70s Rolling Stones on this.
Mm-hmm.
If you listen to Exile on Main Street, that feels like that was inspired by, I don't know if it was, maybe it wasn't, but who knows, but it feels like there's Stooges moments on that album.
Oh, I could definitely see Mick Jagger and Keith Richards sitting around going, Mick, they're pretty good at this, but I think we could do it better. And, make it a little bit more poppin', make it a little bit more sexier, but we could take this energy and really go with it. What do you think? I can totally see them doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, Yeah. So Down on the Street, again, it's, the lyrics don't make a lick of sense.
Nope.
The chorus is he's just yelling "no walls."
Yeah.
Walls, dude. No walls. The riffs are wild. It's just like,
yeah, you come on, pow, pow, pow. Yes. Then we get to Loose. Now,
This is,
I am going to say something. So there is obviously, I always come at things with some of a negative. So, and it's not because I am a negative, but just reminded me of an experience that I had when it went to the second track. I got a little scared because it'd been a long time since I heard the album, and I was like, "Fuck." And I think I've told this story once or twice over the years in the podcast, that there was a show that we were playing, my band, many years ago, well over 20 years ago, at this place called Cheap Thrills. I think maybe you remember what that place was, maybe you don't. Yeah, it was like this head shop, thrift shop, but they also did music on the weekends, and our band would perform there from time to time. And we were asked to open for two bands from Minneapolis. And we're like, yeah, of course, we'll fucking do it. And there was a band that, like, the first song was kind of like, it was very much, pop, I mean, like punk, influenced, not necessarily by the Stooges, but just kind of that thing. And like that first song, the whole audience was really into it, including, us. And then the second song came in and we're like, okay, that sounds a lot like the second or like the first song. And then the third song, you went, oh, fuck. It's just going to be this over and over, isn't it? And there wasn't a lot of variations with the riffs and things like that. However, the one thing that I was like, no, I know, because I knew, there's different riffs on here, but going from, I think, Loose and Down on the Street, those two are kind of almost interchangeable. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, but they kind of complement each other too.
Yes, so. yes, they do. I'll stick it deep inside.
Well, it's kind of almost like they know this music, because the first verse is, I took a ride with the pretty music. I went down and baby, you can tell. I took a ride with the pretty music. Now I'm putting it to you straight to hell. Yeah.
Yep. We know what Iggy's singing about here.
Oh yeah. We know what Iggy's talking about.
Because it's love. Yeah, I do believe. I'll stick it deep inside. Because I'm loose.
Yeah.
Yeah, you sure are.
Yeah.
But the riffs on here are damn good.
They are good. And then we go from that, probably the guitar riff here, we go into TVI.
Oh, so good.
And again,
so good.
Heavily influenced Rage Against the Machine. Sleep Now in the Fire is very similar to this, but I would argue a lot of Rage's riffs are very much inspired by a lot of the riffs on this album.
Yeah.
Now, I love TVI because TVI has the false end.
Yeah, that false end is great.
And the riff's awesome. It's like, and it goes chaotic, and then you think the song's over, and you breathe a bit, and all of a sudden,
yeah, it comes right back.
Right back in.
You could tell that Dave Morello is a big fan of Ron Ashton.
Yeah.
Yep. And I just love like Iggy's voice on this one. She's got a TV eye on me. Like,
it's just
so
dirty. All the songs just feel so dirty and grimy. Like you're at a party with a bunch of fucking stoners.
Yeah.
They're out of their mind on the heroin.
Yeah.
Our high school years.
Yeah, 100%. I was in a very short-lived punk band that would perform at a house on the weekends. And it would just happen to happen. They had like instruments and things down there. And one night we were like, hey, do you want, hey, I hear you. The guy was like, hey, I heard you play guitar and sing. I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, I play drums. And my buddy was like, another guy was like, hey, I play bass. And we just started playing. And people started coming downstairs, and it was the worst punk ever. I mean, it was bad. But everyone was so fucked up, drunk, and on drugs that it became the thing. Like, we would perform like around 10 o'clock at night. That was when we were going to play. So people would come down and listen to us do punks, make up punk songs and do punk songs and do terrible covers of punk. Oh, dude. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I mean, it wasn't nearly as good as TVI, but it reminds me of that energy.
Yeah, and that's the energy on this album is very, like, we throw around punk and metal, and like, because those have a very aggressive energy, and this album has that, but it captures it way better than almost all those other albums. Like all the other punk and metal albums we've discussed, it's just, it seems like all these bands have been trying to like
recreate this.
Yeah, get that vibe that somehow the Stooges were able to replicate.
Which is a genius that I don't know ever can be or will be replicated.
No, I don't think it can be. I think it's that moment in time and where these guys were all at in their heads.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes there's just that magic at a specific place and time in the world, and these guys just happen to be there at the right spot in the right studio with the right engineer and the right producer.
And they captured
it. Just captured it. And
they captured magic lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, and then because then TVI goes like, so I have two super faves on this album. The first one now is Dirt.
Yep.
You shared that in a group.
I love this song.
On Facebook, and the bass that has that hypnotic. It has this weird hypnotic, like amusement park bass line.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like very creepy.
It reminds me of honestly Syd Barrett, Pink Floyd era bass. This like a Roger Waters, Pink Floyd, like you get out of a Pink Floyd, band or a psychedelic band.
A Piper bass line, but you took the riff from Lucifer Sam.
Yes.
Piper, and you put it right in the fucking middle of Interstellar Overdrive.
That's exactly what this is. Yeah. Just that bump, 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 bump. But it's a little off. Like, it's a little off.
It has that David Lynchian creepiness to it.
And
that riff is just off, and you feeling very just like, I'm kind of like, a little worried.
Yep. And then you get that chugga from the guitar coming in, and you just go, oh, this is something. And then you get the juxtaposition of the way Iggy is singing the lines is fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Then like the guitar effects on this too is just they have like the Zippo going across the strings with the echo.
Yep.
Like, very Syd Barrett-ish,
Absolutely. And there's a little bit of wah in there and phaser.
But it's done in like a creepy way. Like this is like music you'd listen to in hell. You know what I mean? Like this is like bad acid trip music, and it's wonderful.
It is, yeah, because I know it doesn't sound like it'd be great, but believe me. And then you got Iggy going things like, "Ooh, I've been dirt," and I don't care. And then he's back to the kind of the soft, "Ooh, I've been dirt." And he's luring you in on these things, and the way he's singing "Burning," because I'm burning inside. Like, oh my God, yes, it's so good.
And you got like the organ going a bit. Fuck, man, and it's just like that bass line. Just again, like repetitive, but it's like. That's why this is why it gets called kind of jazzy, because like you got the backbeat there and the rhythm and the riff, and they're building off of it, and they're going like all these different places musically, and it's fucking wild, man. That bass line is so fucking creepy.
The bass line's creepy, and then what you have is you have the bass line that's creepy. You have the guitar work that's like kind of the psychedelic jazz. Then you have the drums that's also jazz, but it's also got that psychedelic, yes, and that progressive, mixed with like the hard rock that doesn't go with it. And then again, you have Iggy going from actually singing to like getting into the fight, and like when he gets the touch, right, and there you can hear that pop. Like there's that, you don't get that in music because everything's so, you're taught not to sing certain ways, where you don't make the hard T's, you don't make the hard P's, you don't make the hard B's. And he's breaking these rules. And he's basically, this is the quintessential why he is called the Godfather of punk. Yeah. Because you don't get much more punk rock than this. Just doing whatever you want to do, combining all these genres that legitimately should not be going together. And it's a 7-minute opus of glory and beauty.
Exactly. And it's long and it's jammy and it's beautiful. And it's just like, man, and it really makes me, I'm sure there's music being made like this today, but it's hard to find, like, and labels aren't going to put them out, and streaming, you got unlimited music. It's just hard to find it, but like, it's just, I miss this kind of shit, man.
Yeah, I do too.
This is like, like when Zappa talked about like the studios back in the day, like they didn't know what worked, so they just put everything out as a, opposed to what it is today. So, corporate and bean counting and whatever, like you don't get pure artistic raw shit like this anymore.
No. And this is what this is. This is pure raw art coming out. Now, the only negative that I have about it, and it goes through the entire album, is you can definitely tell this was recorded in the 70s. It does have that 70s recording vibe to it. Now, I will admit, I was listening to the non-remastered versions, and then I heard the 2005 remastered version. I will say that I sometimes can't tell the difference. Like, I'm like, okay, what did they do there? I do really like the 2005 remastering.
I did. I liked it a lot because it gave it a lot more warmth and backbeat to it.
Yes.
Like, you feel the bass more, and it has more depth to it. Yep. So when I listened to it, I just stuck with the 2005 remaster because that is it's a world of difference.
It is a really I'm always skeptical when remasters come out because I'm like, oh god. Yeah. But this one, I heard and easily could tell the difference between the remasterings.
Yeah, and so Dirt is one of my uber highlights. This is also one of those albums where I like every song.
Yeah.
We don't really run into that very often.
No, but this is a sweet album. Again, it has that, what is one thing that you and I have been saying the last couple podcasts of? If they kept it to blank number of songs, It would be a great fucking album.
This is all killer, no filler, Paul.
That's exactly what this is. Yeah.
Yep. They didn't need more songs on this.
They didn't need to fuck it up.
Yeah. All right, so now we go into 1970, the sequel to 1969. And this is where things get... So this is the second side of the album, and this is where things get even more chaotic, more Lynchian, I'll argue, because you add the saxophone. Normally, I'm not a big fan of saxophone and rock music.
No, I'm not.
It fucking works here, man.
It shouldn't, and it does, and I don't understand why, because I am the biggest critic of saxophone in rock music. Also, I have to say, this song in particular, this is like the first true punk song that I heard. Like right away, I was like, oh man, this inspired every single punk band, and you can hear, like, Iggy Pop's not, he will be the first one to admit he had a lot of Jim Morrison and Dan Marison influence on him, and you can definitely know that the Misfits and one Danzig, aka Dan Marison himself, that 1970, this was a catalyst for him, no question in my mind.
Yeah, no question in my mind. This was a lot of this inspired the next generation to come. Again, so many bands, it's almost, the Melvins, like, Melvins exist without the Stooges? I don't think so,
and this song in particular, and and
then fun fact, the band Radio Birdman. named after this because they misheard the lyric "radio burning up."
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, again, like this is like there's no calm moment on this album. It keeps going and it keeps getting crazier. And again, it feels like a Lynchian in that sense with like the creepy bass line and now with the saxophone. It's
100%, sir. Yeah, no, this one, and again, sax, and you go, wait a minute, guys, you're talking about a punk song, yet there's sax on it? Yeah, no, and it works.
Yeah, it works. It works. And then we go into my other Uber highlight, which is the title track, Funhouse. Another creepy bass line.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the spiritual cousin of Dirt and on the same goddamn album.
Yep, and the saxophone gets even more chaotic on the song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is like, again, like the guitar, like the effects on the guitar, it works. It's just like, Ron Asheton's, good guitarist, but like he's able to do more with feel and sound than, and that's where he works it with advantage. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, this is another 7-minute opus.
Yeah, 7-minute opus. Again, lyrics are gibberish.
Lyrics don't make sense. Hold me tight, Colin from the Funhouse. Yeah, I came to play. We be separated a little too long. Yeah, I came to play. Iggy Pop was horny. Let's just call it what it is, people.
What else? I love this lyric. Do I dare to whoop y'all with my love?
Every little baby knows just what I've been living in division in the shifting scene. What? Iggy, fuck, man.
It's just, fuck, it's crazy. And, everything goes, and then it just goes into the outro, which is LA Blues. It's an instrumental, and
it's not a blues song.
Unrelenting of this. It just beats you, browbeats you with the insanity. Like, it's just.
You can picture them in the studio doing what like Nirvana and The Who would do. Like, you just see them in the studio just fucking destroying shit.
Oh, God, yes. Absolutely.
I mean, that's all LA Blues is. It's just, it's very akin to me to, rather than getting a full album of it, it's 5 minutes of machine metal noise.
Yeah, it's distortion and screaming and loud guitar and chaotic drumming. Again, like the drumming's all over, but it works, man. Like, I don't know why.
I don't know why it works. It works, and it's a wonderful, like, period to this album. Like,
yeah. It's not merely a period; it's an exclamation point.
Yeah, and and again, the fact that this came out in 1970. Now, you got to understand, we're looking at it from in today's standards, the energy level is there. It's not as crazy as it was, but in 1970, I mean, I also have to think that Iggy Pop, especially with La Blues, he definitely was influenced by Freak Out.
Yeah.
by Zappa's Freak Out, because you can hear Zappa's Freak Out, like the screaming and the yelling and the chaotic and the dissonance, but still keeping the drum and the guitar and the things working, so yeah, absolutely. Fucking Christ.
Fucking yeah. And again, this is like with Zappa, this is like this is the reaction to the hippie stuff, man. Like, it was just like, no, none of that shit for the Stooges. Like, you had this band, you had Alice Cooper, you had Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, and fucking MC5, where it was just like, it just seemed like these bands were like the antithesis of the California Dreamin', San Francisco bands. Like, every genre and era has that reaction, and the Stooges were probably. Stooges and Zappa and all those guys were just fucking. This is flipping the bird, man. Like, fuck you guys.
Well, again, you have people from, again, in the Midwest, I think one of the things is, that you have with those guitar, with those California based, hippie bands as they were. They had perpetual sunshine, man.
Yeah, they don't have
didn't-
the 6 months of brutal winter.
Yeah. You didn't have like coming up to the garage and having the fucking hurt because of how cold it is and how angry you are from that cold, and doing these things and drinking to keep yourself warm. I mean, come on. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So
you could definitely hear the Midwest influence on it.
it's kind of like when we did the Replacements, like how that was like, the Midwest takes these things and just warps it into something, I think, a little more special. Like we just find a way, Husker Du as well in the 80s and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're in a cold Midwest, you're going to be a little pissed off. You're not going to be all, putting flowers in your hair and all that.
You're a little pissed off. Yeah. No.
Yeah, you got a chip on your shoulder in the Midwest.
Yeah, people wonder, Minnesota, we have Minnesota Nice and things like that, but people wonder, like, man, people in the Midwest get a little cranky. Yeah, it's because 7 months of the fucking year is a goddamn hellscape.
And our summers are brutally humid. We really only get, maybe 3 months of, good weather.
Yeah, to give you guys, and this is not an exaggeration, the other day, it was about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, where again we have that new real, the real feel, and it was like 93 up, but the real feel was 107 in Minnesota. Now we also know that come fucking January, it's gonna be goddamn negative 50 at some point. So we literally have swings of 150 degrees, and we live through these fucking extremes.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna be a little saltier with our take on your coastal music.
A little bit. Well, you guys are singing about, oh, it's sun. Where the fuck is ours? Because it's been great for a goddamn month and a half. So yeah, we have that going for us, which is nice.
Yeah, we got that going for us, yeah.
Yeah. So there, like I said, there are, there are some negatives, right? To me, with it, again, the production, you can definitely tell that it was done in the 70s. It definitely has that vibe. The energy level and everything is amazing. But now, by today's standards, by today's extremes and things like that, I think it, you just to say, like I was explaining to my kids, like, this is a crazy album, and like my kids were looking at me like, why is it crazy, Dad? Like, it doesn't seem all that out there. It's not fucking Muffin Time and things like that. And so there is a little bit of that. There is obviously, at least from my point of view, there's a little bit of nostalgia because from when I found this album and things like that. But overall, I mean, this is, again, you and I have talked about, there is no perfect album, but fuck my life if this isn't getting goddamn close.
Yeah, this is close. This is a close one. Yeah, my complaints are pretty much on par with yours. Production is a little, 70s sounding, but I mean, it's kind of hard to avoid that from that era,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and it's chaotic, and maybe not by today's standards, but fuck, man, I had to start somewhere. And this is patient zero.
100%.
At least one of the patient zero was like this, and Bitches Brew, I would say, if you're going to look at chaotic music, that's, chaotic metal, chaotic punk, chaotic hip hop, and DJ music and all that. You can go right back to late 60s, early 70s with Miles Davis and the Stooges and MC5 and
absolutely. And I would say
Interstellar Overdrive by Floyd.
Interstellar Overdrive by Floyd, and I would say Freak Out by
Zappa. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's there. It's there. I know people, they love their Led Zeppelins and their this and that. And I'm going, no, man, it wasn't like this. It wasn't. I'm a big, I got to admit, I am a big proto-punk fan. And punk jazz and that type of thing, and you gotta. This is really where it started. I mean, you could go back to the Bad Seeds for sure, but man, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of proto-punk bands, but the Stooges, there was just a genius with them that I don't know. There's not a few others that matched it.
No, and
At least this album.
Yeah, this album in particular is just it laid the groundwork, I think, for aggressive bands to maybe let their hair down and go beyond the 3-minute mark. I would argue, like, I would say, like, you know, like I said, the Melvins, and I would say, and Justice for All, like going beyond the 4-minute mark. You know, 9 Inch Nails, and it's just, you know, it's just insane. It inspired Bowie.
I was going to say, going back to Bowie going beyond the 5-minute mark, you know, with some shit, you know, I mean, his version of Bowie's, I mean, when you guys get the chance to, I think a lot of people, at least in my circle, know the Bowie version of China Girl. Not a lot of them know the Iggy version of China Girl. And the
Iggy version better, but that's just me. I love Bowie, but you know.
Well, so for me, I look at it and I can't take credit for this. I read someone say that the Iggy version is more heartfelt, while the Bowie version is more sexy. And I think that's the way it is. The energy level it's raw, it's unpolished, and you can tell that, you know, the lyrics of what he's saying means something to Iggy, whereas with Bowie, it's more polished, it's more style over the substance. Still great. I like both. I like both songs. I like the song in general. I just like it.
It's a great song.
So. It's a great song, but both of them, I think, have their absolute, you know, merits in terms of, and they're completely two different takes on the same fucking song that, again, Iggy just farted out one time in the studio. He literally farted the thing out. He was just improvising and coming up with these things and writing it on the fly. Like, it's crazy to think about a song that was that huge came from just fucking around in a studio.
Well, that's the magic of Iggy Pop, Paul.
Fucking A. The guy, man. Genius gets thrown around a lot, but Iggy really is deserving of that title. And again, the guy, I mean, he's fucked up. I'm not gonna, you know, he's not the greatest person in the world. You know, and again, he was crazy on stage, you know, with rolling around and glass and cutting himself. He also helped pioneer that whole thing. So, you know, but out of a lot of the people that you look at who were terrible around that time, Iggy actually, you would think, would be like offender number one. He is more of the decent ones.
Yeah, I think, like, because his stage persona and all that, he kind of comes off as like a goof. But he's a really smart guy, man.
He's a really smart dude. And again, he has less controversies than Bowie did, than Lou Reed did at the time. I mean, you know, but he was more outrageous on stage, much like an Alice Cooper.
Yeah. Alice Cooper's one of those wild guys on stage. He's a smart guy, you know, like.
And a sweetheart off stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, again, Iggy had his moments because of, you know, the drug addiction and things like that. But outside of that, I mean, you don't hear a lot of controversies like, oh, man, you know, Iggy did X, Y, Z. He did some shit on stage and got, you know, in trouble for lewd behavior on stage and things like that. But that's about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so, and again, he was on Pete and Pete. Oh, come on. You know, the guy is been on, you know, just he's been nominated for awards all over the years, and he really, God, he needs more credit than, you know, than what he got.
Yeah,
and has gotten, I think.
Yeah, agreed 100% on that. Yeah, he's just, you know, he's one of those legends that just, you know, people should really appreciate now before he kicks the bucket. I would argue.
I'm yes, 100%. 100%. I really hope that he gets another resurgence before he kicks the bucket, because he deserves to know that, you know, I think he knows throughout the years, like, all these people that he's influenced and all these, things like that. But man, I really think he is due for another one, because I would love for him to be rediscovered by this generation.
I would too. Like, maybe, yeah. Because this music, the Stooges music, his solo work, it's so diverse and weird and good, and like he's done so many different things that it's a good well to go down. And
yeah,
yeah, it's like going through Bowie's career. There's
100%
things going on, and you'll like certain parts better than the others and all that, but still it's a rich discography to go down to.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, he did that duet with Candy, which is like a pop song with the redhead Kate from the B-52s.
Yeah.
And people forget that was done, and it's such a quirky, weird song for it to be this pop song, but it's the only one that really broke the charts for him in the US, and that's just a damn shame.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, Lust for Life, when that came out,
that's true.
Huge. That was huge. That kind of gave him his due, at least in the 90s. But
that's right.
Because he needs another.
I remember the music videos for that. Now that you mentioned it, the music video for Lust for Life, yeah,
that was on MTV's rotation a lot. I love it. That's another great song. That drum. That's a song where the drum beat and riff is like one of those rare times the drum's carrying the song.
And Franz Ferdinand? Oh man, there was a band at the time that basically stole those drums.
I think a lot of bands stole those.
A lot of bands stole those drums. Yeah. Or was it Jet that stole the drum? I think
it was Jet.
I think it was Jet.
You Want to Go My Way or whatever.
Yeah. Now, and that's the other thing. If you guys really want to know more about Iggy's solo, I really think The Idiot is the way to go down. Idiot and Lust for Life.
Yeah, those two are really solid.
Really solid.
Yeah.
It's funny. You mentioned the live version of "I Want to Be Your Dog" off the Crow Angels of City of Angels. We covered as our band. We covered that song, and that was from my influence. And then we also covered The Passenger, and that was my buddy's Rick influence of Iggy Pop. So here we were in this band together, and I had influence from the Stooges, and he had influence from Iggy, and we're doing basically two Iggy songs in our rotation. Yeah.
Two completely different styles of Iggy.
Two completely different styles, The Passenger and I Want to Be Your Dog. And that, I think, is a phenomenal juxtaposition of realizing just how diverse Iggy and the Stooges were. Yeah,
they were. I mean, if you go to the next album, Raw Power, and it's like, it's kind of a slightly different lineup, and that's produced by Bowie.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, it's a little slicker and stuff, but it has
a little slicker.
It's a little slicker, but that's glam was getting out there,
and that's yep. You can hear them slipping into the glam. I was going to say that. Yep, they started slipping into the glam thing, and
these three Stooges albums. If you go Stooges, Funhouse, and Raw Power, I mean, you're not going to go wrong if you want really crazy rock and roll. The bookends are more poppy-ish, the first album, and like Raw Power, like you have Search and Destroy, Give Me Danger, Penetration, Raw Power, Death Trip, and all that stuff.
Search and Destroy is another song that gets a lot of credit and like for influencing a lot of bands. Yep, and not the Metallica Search and Destroy.
no, it's Iggy, but like in the middle of those two albums, these three albums, they're right in the middle. You have Funhouse, which I'm going to have to say, man, it's my favorite Stooges.
Oh,
I'm just going to go on a limb and say that because it's re-listening it for this podcast. It sparked my love for it all over again.
I agree. Me too. 100%.
I forgot how weird and wild and just like it's an adventure listening to this album, track 1 to track 7.
And it's one of those ones where you can just listen to and just do. and just enjoy. Like, yeah, I was listening to this in the car, and I was just like, oh man, some of the albums we do is just a chore, you know, because again, I have that 3 rule minimum.
Yeah.
And this one I was happy to listen to over and over.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not, there's not a concept to it, and it's just like the lyrics, like we discussed, the lyrics are more gibberish and juvenile, just because the vocals are more complimenting the instruments than the instruments complimenting the subject of the song.
100%. So, Joe, would you recommend?
Yes, I would recommend it. This is just a really good album. It just works for me. So it works for me better than, the first album in Raw Power. It's just, yeah, I love it. Yeah, I'm not even gonna put a caveat on there because it's just,
Yep.
If you're listening to this podcast and you've listened to if you listen to Funhouse before going in, you're gonna know whether you like it or not.
Yep.
I love this album.
Yes. I am gonna give it a recommendation. I am gonna give it a caveat because I give everything a caveat, Joe. I know you hate it.
Just review. Just do it. You go on.
And here's why: because we've done a lot of different genres of music. If you're in the more the popular things, you're in the things,
the slicker things.
The slicker things.
More polished.
You may struggle with this. Like if you're OCD when it comes to music, you may struggle with this because it is not slick. It is not polished. It is raw and it is energetic. That said, I think Dirt overall will win you over no matter what genre of music you're into. You may not get that with, say, Down on the Street or Loose or the Blues, but I think Dirt for sure is going to win you over, and I think Funhouse you could get into. That's it's a small, like I said, that's my small caveat. Like, yeah, you should know whether or not this is your style, but I do think Dirt is such a genre bender that it's going to appeal to people that I don't think would think it appeals to.
Yeah, I mean, if you go in and listen to Dirt and like you're a kind of I like jazz music. Well, Dirt you're gonna like probably. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not slick jazz. You're gonna hear the influences of that jazz of that era.
Yep, and there is pop sensibility to Dirt. There is some pop sensibility to Dirt as well. So if you like some pop sensibility, you're going to like Dirt. You're going to find it on Dirt. If you like psychedelic, you're going to find it on Dirt. If you like raw rock, you're going to find it on Dirt. If you like punk, you're going to find it on, like, it's weird. It's weird.
You like wild guitar riffs and solos, and you like weird bass lines, catchy bass lines, and, yeah, Dirt is going to have it all for you.
Yeah, I do think Dirt is the shining fucking jewel in this album.
Yeah.
And, again, Joe, I know we don't say there is the perfect album, but outside of age, fuck, this is a 5 out of 5. This is a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, this is, again, there's no filler songs. They're not trying to, it's front to back. It's what it is, and it's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so good. So I'll say I'm all in. So yes, sir. So Joe, what's going on with the Joe Down?
We still got to do Invincible.
Oh yes.
Ian Brown were on vacations back to back, so
that's right. I saw that you went to California and he went to, was it Illinois?
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia is what it was.
You went to the East Coast. I went to the West Coast.
Yep. Okay. No, good for you guys. I will tell you, I'm planning a vacation in October, so I'm hoping that October I'll be gone for 2 weeks.
Where are you planning on going, Paul?
We haven't fully decided yet. So yeah. Yeah, we haven't fully decided yet, but yeah, we're thinking they're going to be in a vacation in October, hopefully.
Fantastic.
So,
You gotta get those in, Paul. You gotta get them in.
Yeah, 100%. So I've been baking up my PTO for it. So, all right, Joe. Well, do you want to ask me what we're doing next week?
Paul, what are we doing next week?
So we had a fan request.
Okay.
And so we had someone who's like, hey, you guys should listen to this band. And so we are going to do the heavy metal band Ice Nine Kills.
Okay.
And we are going to do their what's called Silver Scream 2, Welcome to Horrorwood. From my understanding of Ice Nine Kills, is their second album. And what they do is they are horror movie inspired hardcore metal music. So all their songs in some way, shape, or form confabulate with either a horror movie, a horror franchise, a horror genre. Their first album was a little bit more cut and dry, like American Nightmare, Thank God It's Friday, which was, inspired by Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that type of thing. So with this one, it's a little more like Cabin Fever, Child's Play, Psycho, Pet Sematary, which I'm sorry, I'm going to say this right now, Joe. No one did a better song about Pet Sematary other than the Ramones. It's not going to happen, so fucking give up. But Resident Evil, American Psycho, Hellraiser, The Fly, Evil Dead. So as a horror fan, I am excited to hear this.
Okay.
But I will say that my walls are up a little bit because I am notoriously picky about my heavy metal.
Yeah, I don't know much about I've heard of the band, so I don't know much, but I just have my walls up because the Joe Down took a fan request once. We had 3 seasons of Fuller House.
Oh god damn. Oh no.
So I'm
That's how that started?
Yeah.
Oh gross.
Yeah.
Oh gross.
Let's hope this isn't a repeat of Fuller House, Paul.
Well, I don't think we're going to have 3 seasons of the Silver Scream. We try to keep it to one album and artist. So, but yes, no, this was something that was like, hey, you guys should check this band out. And I was like, okay. There's other albums I want to do, but if a fan comes to me and says, hey, I'm never going to turn, I'll be honest, I'll never turn a fan down. I'll put your requests over mine. So that is something that I'm going to throw out there for the fans.
I'll tell you something to the fans. I will never take any of your requests.
Here you go. Come to me, guys. Come
go to Paul because I'm just gonna be like, yeah, no.
Yep. Nope. That's fair.
Just because I'm a prick. I'm not trying to be a prick to the fans, but again, 3 seasons of Fuller House kind of jaded me on the whole that fans request. I'll never forgive Joe Brown for that.
Fair enough.
That son of a bitch.
Fair enough. So we'll see where this goes. I mean,
I'm open. I'm open to all music, so it does.
Yeah, and the nice thing is, rather than having 3 seasons of Fuller House, this is only 14 tracks coming in at 47 minutes. So these are going to be short, sweet songs.
So it's Ice Nine Kills. Do you think that's based off of Ice Nine from Cat's Cradle by Vonnegut?
Probably. I'm going to guess that's where that's coming from. I mean, they are. I gotta think so. I would think they'd be. It wouldn't be. I think some people look at it and go, "Oh, it's a 9 Inch Nails." No, I don't think that's it. I think it is Kurt Vonnegut. If I had to guess,
okay.
I would say.
Well, you're going to be doing the research, Paul.
Yep.
So I'm going to let you. That was going to be my first question when we review this.
Yep. So I'll do some really digging into them, and trying to figure out more about them. As it goes, because again, this is a new thing for me. But you would actually be correct already. It is the fictional substance Ice Nine from Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut. So you know what? I gotta give credit. There's some intelligence there.
You're in a Vonnegut reference already. I'm feeling a little more comfortable now, Paul.
100%. I'm with you on that one. Yep. Nope. I value intelligence over anything. So I'm a sapiosexual. So there you go. Joe, do you want to take us out?
No.
This has been Rate That Album with Paul Muad'Dib and Joe Fremming. Thank you for listening.